My name is Quinn Campbell, and the night I walked into my sister Claire's engagement party, the room froze like I'd just risen from the grave. The chatter stopped, the clink of champagne glasses died, and every eye in the Springfield Elks Lodge turned to me. My mother, Diane, stood clutching a flute, her perfectly manicured nails trembling against the glass. My father, Benjamin, sat rigid at the head table, his accountant's poker face cracking just enough to show a flicker of panic. And Claire, golden, untouchable Claire, dropped her fiancé's hand mid-toast, her influencer smile vanishing like it had been slapped off. I wasn't supposed to be here. They told everyone I'd run away, a lost cause who couldn't handle life. But I hadn't run. I'd been lying in a hospital bed, forgotten, while they played the grieving family. I took a step forward, my boots clicking on the polished floor, and let the silence choke them. Then I spoke, loud enough for the whole room to hear. You told them I ran away. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Somewhere, a fork clattered to the floor. But I was in a hospital, I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. And I remember everything. Growing up in Springfield, Illinois, my life was a balancing act on a tightrope of my mother's expectations. Diane ran a catering business, every event a stage for her to prove we were perfect. The house smelled like her signature rosemary bread, but it was laced with tension. She'd scrub counters until her knuckles turned white, muttering about how I never got it right. I was 19, juggling community college and late-night shifts at Rosie's Diner off Route 66, scraping tips to pay for textbooks. I wasn't perfect, but I was trying, something Diane never seemed to notice. She'd snap at me for leaving a dish in the sink, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Quinn, why can't you be more like Claire? My sister, Claire, was the star, 2 years older, with a growing Instagram following and a knack for charming everyone. When she crashed Dad's sedan into a neighbor's fence, Diane called it youthful spirit and baked her favorite lemon bars. When I forgot to fold laundry, I was lazy, ungrateful, a disappointment. Dad, Benjamin, was no help. He'd hide behind his spreadsheets, avoiding the chaos, leaving me to face Diane's wrath alone. That night at the party, I saw it all in their faces, the guilt they'd buried under lies. Claire's engagement was the talk of Springfield, her Pinterest-perfect life on display with fairy lights and a dessert table straight out of a magazine. Cousins, neighbors, even Pastor Mike from First Baptist were there, sipping Prosecco and toasting her future. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know I'd spent weeks in a coma, my name reduced to Jane Doe, while my family pretended I'd vanished on purpose. I stood there, heart pounding, feeling the weight of every ignored phone call, every lie they'd told. Diane took a shaky step toward me, her voice thin. Quinn, you look well. I smiled, sharp and deliberate. You told them I was unstable, that I ran off in shame. The crowd shifted, whispers starting to buzz. Benjamin cleared his throat, his usual signal to shut things down. Quinn, this isn't the time. Oh, it's exactly the time. I cut in, my voice slicing through the room. I turned to the guests, their faces a mix of confusion and curiosity. They didn't lose me. They erased me. Want to know what really happened? I let the question hang, watching my family squirm. Knowing this was just the beginning, I can still smell the rosemary bread in our Springfield kitchen, the kind Diane baked to impress clients, but never let us touch. That scent was my childhood, warm, inviting, but off-limits, just like her approval. Our house on Elm Street was a showroom for her catering business, every surface polished to hide the cracks in our family. Diane was a whirlwind of control, her voice sharp as she barked orders. Quinn, set the table properly, God. Do you ever listen? It didn't matter if I got an A on a paper or pulled a double shift at Rosie's Diner. I was always falling short. She'd wipe down counters 3 times a morning, her eyes darting to me like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out. You're so ungrateful, she'd say, her words landing like a slap. Do you know how hard I worked to keep this family together? I wanted to scream that I was trying, that I was exhausted from trying, but I just nodded, swallowing the hurt. Dad, Benjamin, was a ghost in his own home. He'd sit at the kitchen table, buried in spreadsheets, his glasses reflecting numbers he cared about more than us. I don't know if he was avoiding Diane's temper or just didn't know how to step in, but his silence left me alone in the storm. Claire, though, she sailed through it. My sister was the golden child, her Instagram posts racking up likes while Diane bragged about her natural charm. When Claire totaled Dad's sedan after a party, Diane laughed it off, saying, "She's just spirited," and baked her favorite lemon bars. When I stayed out 15 minutes past curfew, I got a lecture about responsibility that left me crying in my room. Claire would flash her perfect smile, toss her hair, and say, "Quinn, just chill. It's not a big deal." But it was. Every double standard, every overlooked mistake of hers, piled up until I felt like I was drowning in their expectations. I wasn't angry back then, not really, just bone-tired. At 19, I was balancing community college and late shifts at the diner, my hands always smelling like grease and coffee. I'd come home at 2 a.m., my feet aching, only to hear Diane snap if I left my shoes by the door. I kept telling myself I'd get out one day, maybe move to Chicago, start fresh, where no one judged me for existing. But every day in that house chipped away at me, made me smaller, until I started to believe I was the problem. I didn't know then that the real breaking point was coming, that one fight would push me out the door and into a darkness I'd barely survive. All I knew was that I was tired of being invisible, tired of trying to be enough for a family that didn't see me. It started with a fight, like so many nights in our house. Diane was in the kitchen, her catering menus spread across the counter, her face tight with that look she got when I'd disappointed her again. I'd just come home from a double shift at Rosie's, still in my grease-stained apron, when she started in. "Quinn, you're throwing your life away at that diner," she snapped, her voice slicing through the quiet. "You think waitressing is a future?" I tried to explain college, my grades, the tips I saved, but she cut me off. "You're a disgrace to this family." The words hit harder than usual, maybe because I was so tired, maybe because I'd heard them too many times. My hands shook as I grabbed my jacket, the porch light flickering as I stormed out. I just needed air, a few blocks to clear my head. I told myself I'd be back before she noticed. The streets of Springfield were quiet that night, the air sharp with late fall chill. My breath puffed out in clouds as I walked past the old gas station on Route 66, its neon sign long since burned out. My thoughts were loud, though, Diane's words looping in my head, calling me a failure, a burden. I turned a corner, my sneakers scuffing the pavement, when headlights cut through the dark. They were too bright, too fast. I froze, my heart lurching, but there was no time to move. The impact was like fire exploding through me, hot, sharp, then nothing. Just black. When I woke up, the world was wrong. The ceiling was too white, the sheets too stiff, and my mouth felt like I'd swallowed sand. Wires snaked from my arms to machines that beeped steadily beside me. A nurse leaned over, her voice soft but distant. "Hey, you're awake. You're at Springfield Memorial. You've been out for a while." I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, like I'd screamed for hours. "You were in a hit and run," she said, her eyes kind but guarded. "No ID. You've been here almost 3 weeks." 3 weeks? The words didn't make sense. Someone had to be looking for me, Diane, Benjamin, even Claire. But the nurse's face told me otherwise. No visitors, no calls, no flowers. They'd listed me as a Jane Doe, put an ad in the Springfield Register. Unidentified woman, found unconscious on Route 66. No one answered. I was alone, a blank space in a hospital bed, with no memory of who I was or why no one came. The hospital days blurred together, a haze of white walls and beeping monitors. I was a puzzle with missing pieces, relearning how to hold a spoon, how to walk without wobbling. The nurses were kind, but their pity stung. They looked at me like I was a lost cause, a Jane Doe nobody claimed. I didn't know my name, my birthday, or why I felt so hollow. Sometimes I'd catch flashes, a woman's sharp voice, the smell of rosemary bread, a car door slamming, but they slipped away like dreams. The doctors called it retrograde amnesia, said my memories might come back, or they might not. I spent my days staring out the window at Springfield's gray skyline, wondering who I'd been and why no one missed me. Then, one night, everything changed. A nurse had left the TV on, some old music channel playing Fleetwood Mac's Landslide. The melody hit me like a current, pulling something loose inside me. I saw a kitchen counter, a plate of toast, Diane's rings clinking as she slammed it down. Her voice, "You're pathetic, Quinn." Then more, Claire's laugh, Dad's silence, the cold air on my skin as I walked out that night. The headlights too fast, too bright. My body jolted, the heart monitor screeching. The nurse rushed in, asking if I was okay. I remembered something, I whispered, my voice shaking not from fear but from something hotter, sharper. The next day, a therapist sat with me, her voice gentle as she urged me to let the memories come slowly. But they didn't. They crashed in like a storm. Every fight with Diane, every shift at Rosie's, every time Claire got away with everything. And then the worst, the face behind the wheel. Claire. My sister, her eyes wide, mouth open like she was yelling, her influencer hoodie glowing in the headlights. I saw the beer cans at her friend's party earlier that night, how she'd stumbled to Dad's car, how Diane let her drive anyway. And then Dad's voice, low and cold, from a memory I hadn't placed. "Don't say a word, Claire. She shouldn't have been out there." They knew. They knew it was her, and they let me lie in that hospital bed, erased me like I was nothing. The betrayal burned, turning my loneliness into rage. I wasn't just a victim. I was a truth they couldn't bury anymore. The truth hit me harder than the car did. While I was in Springfield Memorial, relearning how to walk, my family was rewriting my life. Diane told everyone I'd had a mental breakdown, that I'd stormed out after a fight, too unstable to stay. She spun a story so convincing even our neighbors believed it. Quinn, the troubled one, ran off barefoot, refusing help. They held a vigil at First Baptist, candles flickering as Diane dabbed her eyes for the crowd. Claire gave a speech, her voice thick with fake tears. "Quinn, wherever you are, we just want you to be safe." Safe. While I was hooked to machines, my name stripped away, they were at the Lake Springfield cabin, laughing, taking family photos without me. They donated my clothes, boxed at my books, wiped my room clean like I'd never existed. I saw a photo later, posted on Claire's Instagram. A perfect shot of her, Diane and Benjamin by the lake, all smiles. The caption read, "Family time heals all." It was taken weeks after the accident, when I was still a Jane Doe, when they knew I was lying in a hospital bed across town. They weren't grieving, they were relieved. Diane could focus on her catering empire without my failures dragging her down. Benjamin could keep his head in his spreadsheets, no longer dodging my questions. Claire could keep her influencer glow, her likes climbing without me in the background, the sister who didn't fit her curated life. They were better off without me, and that realization cut deeper than any of Diane's words ever had. I sat in my hospital bed, clutching my discharge papers, staring at the Springfield skyline through a smudged window. The nurses had stopped expecting visitors, their pity replaced with quiet acceptance. When they finally reached Diane, she didn't even come to the phone. The social worker told me, her voice soft but heavy, "Your mother said you ran away, that you've always been troubled. They don't want contact." I wanted to scream, to tear the fore from my arm and storm back to Elm Street. Instead, I sat still, the truth settling like ash in my lungs. They hadn't just abandoned me, they'd erased me. But I wasn't going to stay erased. I was going to come back, and when I did, they'd hear every word. I thought I'd been forgotten for good until Aunt Linda walked into my hospital room one rainy afternoon. She was Diane's older sister, a librarian with a warm smile and eyes that saw through lies. Growing up, she'd been my safe haven. Summers at her house meant library trips and lemon bars, no yelling, no eggshells. She looked tired now, her graying hair pulled back, but her hug was real, like she was anchoring me to the world. "I never believed them, Quinn," she whispered, sitting on the vinyl couch by the window. Rain tapped the glass as she held my hand, the first touch that didn't feel like pity in months. "They said you ran off, that you were unstable. I knew it wasn't true. Linda told me everything. Diane had spun a story for the whole town, cousins, church friends, even the mailman, saying I'd had a breakdown, left in the middle of the night. When Linda asked why they hadn't filed a police report, Diane snapped, told her to stop meddling. Benjamin, she said, knew Claire had taken his car that night, knew she'd been drinking at a party. He'd told Claire to keep quiet, said I shouldn't have been walking so late, in dark clothes, like it was my fault. Linda's voice broke as she said, he called it an accident, Quinn, but he let them blame you. I laughed, a sharp, empty sound that made her flinch. They hadn't just lied, they'd turned me into a ghost, held fundraisers in my name while Claire posted old photos with captions like, "Miss you, sis." All for show. Did I looked at Linda, my hands trembling not from weakness but from something new, resolve. Can I stay with you? I asked. Just until I figure this out? She nodded, no hesitation, her eyes fierce. As long as you need. For the first time, I felt seen, like I wasn't just a shadow of their lies. I left the hospital with a limp, a folder of medical records, and a fire in my chest. I wasn't going to fade away. The next time my family saw me, it'd be on my terms, and I'd make sure the whole town was watching. Claire's engagement party was straight out of her Instagram dreams. White linen tablecloths, fairy lights twinkling over the patio of the Springfield Country Club, a dessert table stacked with Diane's famous macarons. The whole town was there, cousins, church friends, even the mayor, sipping cocktails and toasting Claire's perfect life. I stood outside the gate, my heart hammering like it wanted to break free. My palms were sweaty, my breath short, but I wasn't scared. Not anymore. I'd spent weeks with Aunt Linda, piecing myself back together, practicing what I'd say. Tonight, I'd make them face the truth. I walked in, my boots loud against the patio stones, and heads turned like dominoes falling. A fork clattered. Someone whispered my name. Diane saw me first, her face draining to the color of her tablecloths. She gripped the edge of a table, her voice barely a whisper. Quinn, you're here. Claire froze mid-toast, her fiancé looking confused as she dropped his hand. Benjamin cleared his throat, his go-to move to shut things down. Quinn, this isn't the place. It's exactly the place, I snapped, my voice cutting through the murmurs. I turned to the crowd, their eyes wide with curiosity. They told you I ran away, that I was unstable, a mess who couldn't handle life. But I was in a hospital, in a coma, while they pretended I didn't exist. Claire opened her mouth. You don't know what you're saying, Quinn. Really? I said, my voice steady, rage burning through every word. Because I remember your face behind the wheel, Claire. The beer on your breath, the party you stumbled out of. A gasp rippled through the guests. I pulled out my phone, my hand steady now. Want to hear what a cover-up sounds like? I hit play, and Benjamin's voice filled the patio, slurred and low from a voicemail Linda had found. Claire, keep your mouth shut. She shouldn't have been out there. The crowd froze. Diane covered her mouth. Claire backed away, and Benjamin's face went gray. You didn't lose me, I said, looking straight at them. You erased me. I turned and walked out, the silence behind me louder than any words. They'd hear this truth forever. Be why the next morning, Springfield was buzzing. Someone recorded my speech at the party, and the voicemail spread like wildfire, shared on Instagram, texted to book clubs, even emailed to the local paper. The headline in the Springfield Register read, Local family hid hit and run truth. Claire's influencer deals dried up. Brands don't like drunk drivers, especially when the victim was their own sister. Benjamin faced questioning for obstruction, his lawyer scrambling to keep him out of headlines. Diane tried to host another church event, this time for healing. Nobody showed. Neighbors stopped smiling at her, and First Baptist's pews emptied when she walked in. The Campbell's perfect facade was ash, and I didn't feel a drop of guilt. I got a letter a week later, no return address, just my name in Benjamin's stiff handwriting. Inside was a check, more money than I'd ever seen, and a note. I should have protected you. I didn't cash it. I framed the note, not for forgiveness, but as proof they'd lost. I didn't need their money or their apologies. I needed the silence to end. And it did. I moved to Chicago, got a job at a cozy bookstore on Wicker Park's main drag, the kind that smells like old pages and fresh starts. My apartment's small, with creaky floors and a view of a brick alley, but it's mine. No yelling, no eggshells, just quiet. I finished my degree online, started journaling again, found a therapist who listens when I say I wasn't lost, I was erased. Aunt Linda sends postcards, farmers markets, thrift store finds, her lemon bar recipe. She doesn't say much, and she doesn't need to. On my shelf between dog-eared novels sits a photo of my old family, me at 12, Claire's fake smile, Diane's perfect pose, Benjamin stiff as ever. I burn the edges, not to hold on to pain, but to remember I survived it. The truth didn't just break them, it set me free. I'm not the girl who walked out that night, or the Jane Doe who woke up alone. I'm Quinn, and this life, messy, quiet mine, is enough to owe everyone who followed this journey. Thank you. You've walked with me through betrayal, rage, and a hard-won freedom. If my story hit you, hit that subscribe button and join us, where every truth told is a step toward healing, every fight a chance to rise. Keep chasing your own light, and I'll meet you on the other side.